You're just another black boy with no future. Judge Whitaker's gavel slams down, the echo cutting through the courtroom like a gunshot.
Order in the
Marcus
court.
Johnson, only 17, rises slowly. The entire room goes silent. Every stare presses on his shoulders, but he doesn't flinch. The judge leans forward, eyes cold. I know you're kind. Just another statistic. No discipline. No father figure. His finger jabs the air between them. Where is your father anyway? Marcus locks eyes with him, voice steady. May I call him, Your Honor? A smirk creeps across the judge's lips. By all means, if he even answers. Marcus pulls out his phone, the weight of the moment making every movement deliberate. The courtroom holds its breath. He dials. Dad, Marcus says calmly, his voice carrying through the hushed chamber. Judge Whitaker says you failed to raise me right. He's wondering where you are. Could you come to courtroom 4B now? The silence thickens. No one dares move. Who exactly is on the other end of that line? Marcus Johnson's phone stayed pressed to his ear. The line open. The judge's smirk lingering in the air. The gallery was frozen, phones half raised, whispers caught in throats. But before anyone could hear a reply from the mysterious dad, the screen fades back, rewinding the story. Earlier that morning, the sky above downtown Chicago was gray, streaked with haze that clung stubbornly to the skyline. The federal courthouse loomed like a stone fortress, its steel detectors buzzing every few seconds as streams of lawyers, defendants, and witnesses passed through. Marcus adjusted the strap of his backpack and held carefully to the box in his hands, a compact air quality monitoring device he had spent 6 months building from scratch. It wasn't much to look at, wires, sensors, a small display panel. But to Marcus, it was proof that a kid from Southside could contribute something meaningful. Today, he was supposed to present his findings to the city's environmental committee, a group of scientists and policymakers who actually had the power to change things. He had been up all night rehearsing his slides, repeating his lines in front of the bathroom mirror. But standing before the metal detector, his confidence slipped. The machine beeped sharply as he stepped through. A guard. Officer Briggs turned, his jaw tightening at the sight of Marcus's device. What's that contraption? Briggs demanded, snatching it before Marcus could answer. It's an air quality monitor, sir. I'm here to... Looks suspicious to me. Briggs cut in, turning the box over roughly. Marcus forced himself to stay calm. I have documentation. He reached for his backpack. Hands where I can see them. Briggs barked, his hand drifting toward his belt. The other visitors turned to look, some smirking, others whispering. Marcus froze, his palms out. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. 2 more guards approached. Behind them, an older man in a black robe paused to watch. His gaze was sharp, his lips curled in something between disdain and amusement. Judge William Whitaker. Marcus recognized him instantly. His face was plastered on billboards during his last re-election campaign. Tough on crime, tough on kids like Marcus, the papers had whispered in the community. Judge Whitaker stepped closer, his arms crossed. And what exactly is this boy carrying? Briggs lifted the box higher. Claims it's a science project? Marcus steadied his voice. I'm presenting to the Environmental Committee today. Sir, room 302, 11A, The judge glanced at his watch. Environmental Committee in my courthouse? Never heard of a student presentation here? It's real, Marcus said quickly. Dr. Williams confirmed it. I have an excused absence from school. Whitaker's eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. Bring him to my courtroom first. The words landed like chains. The guards closed in, gripping Marcus by the arms, ignoring the way he tried to keep the box steady. He felt wires jolt loose inside. As he was escorted down the hallway, Marcus watched other visitors breeze through security. A white college student carried a tri-fold science board without a second glance. A man in a tailored suit passed with a briefcase untouched. Only Marcus had been singled out. He pulled his phone from his pocket, thumbed a quick message. Delayed at security. Might miss my presentation. His father replied instantly. What's happening? Marcus stared at the screen, wanting to unload the truth. Instead, he typed, just extra checks. Nothing serious. By the time he was shoved into Whitaker's courtroom, the box containing his project was already disassembled across a wooden table. Pieces of wire and plastic scattered like debris. The judge sat high on the bench, scrolling on his phone. Without looking up, he asked, explain again what this device does. Marcus forced his voice to remain steady. It measures particulate matter in neighborhoods. I've been collecting data for 6 months, showing a correlation between air pollution and high rates of asthma and respiratory illness. Whitaker flicked the papers Marcus had printed, letting them fall to the floor. And why bring this to my courthouse? Because the committee meets here monthly. They invited me. Whitaker finally looked up, his eyes sharp. Are you telling me how to run my court? No, sir. Just... His hand slammed against the bench. The echo reverberated across the empty chamber. A censer tumbled off the table, cracking as it hit the floor. That's months of research, Marcus cried before he could stop himself. Research? Whitaker sneered. Is that what they call it now? Where'd you get the parts? Who really built this? I did. With a grant from the State Science Foundation? The judge's jaw tightened. A likely story. He turned to the guards. Hold this device for inspection. Maybe eventually, if his story checks out, he can have it back. Marcus swallowed his fury. May I have a receipt for my property, Your Honor? Whitaker's smile faltered. Getting legal advice from somewhere. Are we? He leaned forward. Learn this lesson. Boy, this courthouse isn't your playground. Marcus was shoved back into the hallway. He sat stiffly on a bench, the clock ticking toward 11. His presentation window was closing. That was when a familiar voice called his name. Marcus, why aren't you setting up? Dr. Williams, his wiry-haired mentor, stood at the end of the hall. He wore a tweed jacket and carried a folder stuffed with papers. His eyes widened as Marcus explained. That's absurd, Dr. Williams snapped. You're our keynote student today. Come. They pushed back into Whitaker's courtroom together. The judge was still on his phone, but his posture shifted when he noticed the professor beside Marcus. Judge Whitaker, Dr. Williams said firmly. There's been a misunderstanding. This student is our invited presenter. The judge barely glanced at him. This young man brought unauthorized electronics into a federal building. That requires investigation. It's a vetted science project, Dr. Williams insisted. Did you run background checks on him and his family? Whitaker shot back. Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. He's one of our brightest students, Williams said carefully. Whitaker's eyes pinned Marcus. Where exactly are you from, Mr. Johnson? Chicago. My family's been here for generations. The judge made a dismissive noise. His property remains confiscated. He can attend without it. But his entire presentation requires... Then he should have planned better, Whitaker said sharply. His gavel struck once. Dismissed. Minutes later, Marcus stood before the environmental committee empty-handed. His chest felt hollow, his palms damp. A dozen city officials sat around the table, their pens poised. Observers lined the walls, murmuring. I apologize, Marcus began. Judge Whitaker confiscated my project. I'll try to explain my findings from memory. The pitying look stung more than any insult. But then he inhaled, steadying his voice. For 6 months, I placed air sensors in different neighborhoods. The results showed particulate levels 3 times higher in low income, minority communities compared to affluent areas. These spikes correlated directly with asthma emergency room visits. He sketched diagrams on a borrowed notepad, his words gaining strength with each sentence. Faces leaned forward, whispers quieted. even without slides. His passion carried. When he finished, silence filled the room. Then the committee chair, Dr. Lawson, began to clap. Others followed. "Remarkable," Lawson said, "especially under these circumstances. Would you consider presenting at the state conference next month?" Marcus blinked, overwhelmed. "Yeah, sir, I'd be honored." But when he slipped into the restroom afterward, adrenaline crashed out of him. His hands shook as he left a voicemail. "Dad, Judge Whitaker took my project. I managed okay, but I could use advice. Call me when you can." Back in the hall, Dr. Williams squeezed his shoulder. "You did incredibly well, but we're not letting this go. Let's get your project back." They returned to Whitaker's courtroom. By then, it was filled with real cases. Marcus watched carefully. A white defendant was treated with patience and courtesy. Minutes later, a young Latina woman was cut off mid-sentence and scolded for wasting the court's time. By the time the cases ended, Marcus had already connected dots in his mind. Patterns, bias. A judge who punished people like him while protecting others. When Whitaker finally acknowledged him, Marcus asked politely for his property back. "Not possible," Whitaker said flatly. "Could be days, could be weeks." Marcus's hands clenched. "Sir, it contains months of irreplaceable data." "Then you should have thought before bringing suspicious devices," the judge replied, dismissing him. Marcus walked out, his composure perfect, but his chest burning. Outside on the courthouse steps, he pulled out his phone again. This time, he didn't call his father. He called his Uncle James. "Uncle, I need legal advice about property confiscation in a federal building." There was a long pause on the line. Then his uncle's voice came back firm. "Tell me everything." And that was how the day spiraled. From a boy with a science project to a teenager facing down the most powerful man in the courthouse. Tomorrow morning, his project would be marked for disposal. And Marcus knew this fight had only just begun. The text came during lunch. A vibration against Marcus Johnson's thigh that he almost ignored. He was slouched at the cafeteria table, trying to choke down a sandwich that tasted like cardboard. His friends laughed around him, oblivious to the storm that had swallowed his world. When he glanced at his phone, the screen chilled him. "Your project marked for disposal tomorrow morning. Security protocol. Sorry, friend at courthouse." The number was blocked. Marcus's stomach dropped. He read the message 3 times, each word burning hotter in his chest. Disposal. Tomorrow. Everything he had worked for. 6 months of field work. Weeks of calibration. The hundreds of hours soldering wires by lamplight. Gone like trash. He bolted from the cafeteria, ignoring the shouts behind him, and ducked into the empty hallway. His fingers shook as he tried calling his father again. Straight to voicemail. "Dad, it's urgent. They're destroying my project. Please call back." He hung up, breathing hard. Then he scrolled to another number, his Uncle James. The line clicked, the voice crisp. "Marcus, I've been expecting your call." "They're going to destroy it," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice from breaking. "Tomorrow morning, security protocol." They said, "Slow down. Who sent that?" "I don't know. Block number. Said it was a friend at the courthouse." There was silence on the other end, followed by a sigh. "All right. First, document everything. Write down the message, the time it came. Screenshot it. Then, names. Every person you interacted with. Times, dates, what they said. We'll need a record." "I already started. Judge Whitaker, Officer Briggs, security desk at 9:30. Good. Keep going. Don't confront anyone alone, and don't give them an excuse to say you were causing trouble. I'll make calls tonight." Marcus clutched the phone tighter. "Uncle James, what if it's too late? Then we rebuild. But we fight first. Remember, power respects persistence, not silence." The call ended. Marcus stood alone in the empty hall, his reflection warped in the glass trophy case beside him, his hands clenched into fists. He thought of the kids in his neighborhood, coughing in gym class, hooked up to inhalers at recess. That project wasn't just wires and sensors. It was their breath on the line. That evening, Marcus spread papers across the garage floor. His mother leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him sort through schematics and receipts. He hadn't eaten dinner. He hadn't even changed out of his school clothes. "You're still at it?" she asked gently. "They're going to destroy it," he said, not looking up. He clipped two wires together, sparks spitting. "If I can rebuild the core module tonight, I'll still have something to show at the science fair next week." "Marcus, sometimes fighting isn't worth it." He shook his head, soldering iron in hand. "This one is, Mom, what is it really about?" The question hung in the air. Marcus paused, staring at the half-finished circuit board. Finally, he said, "When Whitaker confiscated my project, he didn't just take a device. He tried to silence the data. My data shows his courthouse sits in the worst pollution zone in the city. Maybe that's not an accident." Her eyes widened. "You think the judge did this on purpose?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Early the next morning, Marcus arrived at the courthouse before the doors opened. The air was sharp with the smell of diesel from passing buses. He carried a folder stuffed with notarized documents, ownership papers, grant approvals, schematics, all assembled overnight with Uncle James's help. When the heavy doors groaned open, he stepped inside, every movement deliberate. Officer Briggs was at the desk, his face a mask of irritation. "You again." "I need to see Judge Whitaker," Marcus said calmly. "My property is scheduled for disposal." Briggs smirked. "Not my problem. Come back tomorrow." "This can't wait. Please." The officer shrugged. "Orders are orders." Marcus spotted Briggs starting down the hall. He hurried to intercept him. "Officer Briggs, wait." The man turned, clearly annoyed. "My project, it has data that can't be replaced. Could I at least recover the storage drive? It's the small blue, no unauthorized access to secured items." Briggs snapped. "Learn your lesson and move on." Marcus's voice lowered, calm but firm. "Is your pension worth destroying evidence of environmental discrimination?" For a split second, Briggs faltered. His eyes darted left and right. Then he turned on his heel and stalked away. Marcus stepped back outside, pulse hammering. He called Uncle James again. "They're stonewalling me," Marcus said. "Good, yeah, that means you're rattling them." James replied, "Document it, every word. I've started my calls." By noon, Marcus was still sitting on the courthouse steps. The winter wind sliced at his cheeks, but he refused to leave. Lawyers, clerks, and defendants streamed past, tossing him curious glances. Some looked at him with pity, others with annoyance. Finally, a woman in a navy blazer stopped. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed, carrying a stack of files under her arm. "You've been sitting here all morning," she said. "Court business?" Marcus looked up. "I'm trying to recover my confiscated property. It's being destroyed today." She raised an eyebrow. "What property?" "A science project, air quality monitor. Judge Whitaker seized it." At that name, her expression darkened. She set her files on the step and sat beside him. "I'm Laura Chen, Public Defender's Office. Whitaker has a reputation. Let me make a call." She stepped away, phone to her ear. Marcus leaned forward, hope flickering for the first time in days. When she returned, her face was grim. "I spoke with court administration," she said quietly. "Your project has already been moved to the disposal level, but if we act fast, we might still intervene." Marcus shot to his feet. "Let's go." They hurried through the courthouse corridors, Laura's heels clicking against the marble floor. At the basement door, a security officer blocked their path. "No entry," he said flatly. "This young man's property is being illegally destroyed." Laura argued, Orders, the officer replied. Through the small window, Marcus caught a glimpse, his project lying in pieces on a table, a disposal bin looming beside it. His chest tightened. That's it, he said desperately. That's my work. The guard shifted to block the view. Step back. Laura pulled Marcus aside, her voice low but urgent. We need a judge's order. I'll file an emergency motion. But before they could move, the elevator dinged. Judge Whitaker emerged, his robe flowing, his face sour. Well, he said coldly. Miss Chen, consorting with troublemakers today? Your Honor, Laura said firmly. This young man's property is being improperly disposed of. I'm filing for a stay. Whitaker chuckled darkly. Save your paperwork. That device was deemed a security risk by me personally. Based on what evidence? Laura challenged. My courtroom, my decision. He gestured to a nearby officer. Escort them out. Mr. Johnson is banned from this building. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady. Sir, I've been respectful. I've followed every rule. Why are you doing this? Whitaker's eyes gleamed. Because I can. Some people need to learn their place. Laura grabbed Marcus's arm, whispering urgently. Don't engage. We'll find another way. As they were pushed toward the doors, Marcus glanced back. Through the window, he saw Whitaker pick up a hammer, raising it above the fragile wires and sensors. He's going to destroy it himself, Marcus whispered. Laura's face hardened. Then we know this isn't about security. It's personal. Time to call in bigger guns. Outside, the cold air hit Marcus like a slap. Reporters lingered nearby, sniffing for stories, but no one paid attention to him yet. Laura was already dialing numbers. Her voice clipped. No one wants to cross him, she muttered after hanging up. Every judge I called passed the buck. He has too much influence here. Marcus paced the sidewalk, heart in his throat. His phone rang. Dad? He answered quickly. No, came the voice. It's me, Uncle James. Marcus exhaled, fighting the sting of disappointment. Listen carefully, James said. Whitaker's playing dirty, but I've pulled strings too. Help is on the way. Hold tight. Marcus closed his eyes, gripping the phone like a lifeline. He had no idea who his uncle meant, or how much longer his project had before the hammer fell. But one thing was clear. He couldn't walk away now. This wasn't just about a school science project anymore. It was about justice, about whether truth could survive in a system determined to bury it. And Marcus Johnson, 17 years old, was not about to let the truth die quietly. The phone rang again just as Marcus and Laura reached the corner cafe across from the courthouse. Laura had insisted they step inside, warm up, and regroup before making their next move. The smell of burnt coffee and frying eggs filled the air. Marcus slid into a booth, his body stiff, his mind racing. He glanced at the screen. Dad. His thumb hovered. For a second, every emotion, relief, anger, fear, crashed into him at once. He hit accept. Marcus! The voice on the other end was deep, steady, and controlled. Tell me what's happening. Marcus swallowed. Dad, Judge Whitaker confiscated my project. He says it's suspicious. He's about to destroy it. His voice cracked. He made it personal. There was silence and then a low exhale. Where are you now? Across the street, with a public defender, Laura Chen. She's trying to help. Put her on. Laura blinked, surprised, as Marcus handed her the phone. She pressed it to her ear. Hello, this is... Yes, I understand. He has the authority, but not the right. Exactly. Destroying evidence. Wait, you know about the disposal order already? She sat straighter, her expression sharpening. Yep, sir. Of course, sir. When she handed the phone back, her eyes were wide. Who exactly is your father? Marcus hesitated. Robert Johnson. He works for the government, Justice Department. Laura stared at him like she just solved a riddle. Marcus, your father isn't just some attorney, is he? Before Marcus could answer, his father's voice filled the line again. Son, listen carefully. Go back to the courthouse. If security refuses you, tell them to call this number. He recited an extension. Say nothing more. Let me handle it. Dad. Now, Marcus. The call ended. Back at the courthouse doors, the same guard from earlier folded his arms. Didn't I tell you? You're banned. Laura stepped forward, calm but firm. Call this number. She held up her phone, the digits glowing. The guard scoffed. Lady, that number's not... Call it, she repeated, voice slicing through his doubt. Reluctantly, the guard dialed. Marcus watched his expression shift, irritation, then confusion, then sudden fear. He straightened instantly. Yep, sir, right away. Understood. But he hung up, throat tight. You may proceed to Judge Whitaker's chambers. The guard didn't look Marcus in the eye. The walk through the courthouse felt surreal. Every marble column, every echoing footstep seemed charged with invisible power. Marcus's palms sweated as they stopped before Whitaker's chambers. The clerk at the desk started to wave them off, but when Laura mentioned the number again, her face drained of color. She disappeared inside and returned moments later. The judge will see you now. Inside, Judge Whitaker stood behind his desk, robe draped like armor, hammer lying beside Marcus's broken project. The device was half smashed, wires dangling like torn veins. This is harassment, Whitaker barked. I've made my ruling. The device is a security risk. Laura raised her phone. Your Honor, we were instructed to call this number if you refuse to return Mr. Johnson's property. Whitaker sneered. Some bureaucrat doesn't scare me. Marcus, his voice steady despite the quake in his chest, said quietly, Maybe you should call it yourself. Something in his tone made Whitaker pause. With deliberate disdain, he dialed. This is Judge William Whitaker. Who is this? The line answered, clear and commanding. Marcus watched the blood drain from the judge's face. Yes, sir. I understand. But the device was... Yes, sir. Yes. He hung up, hand trembling. When he spoke, his arrogance was gone. Mr. Johnson, your property will be returned immediately, in its original condition, with all data intact. Marcus didn't blink. Thank you, Your Honor. They gathered the project carefully. Marcus's fingers lingered on the cracked casing, relief flooding him. But before they could leave, his phone rang again. Put Judge Whitaker on the line, his father said. Marcus extended the phone. Whitaker looked at it as if it were a viper. Slowly, he lifted it to his ear. This is Judge Whitaker. The silence stretched. Then his eyes widened. His jaw slackened. Yes, Mr. Attorney General. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, I'll clear my docket. His voice cracked. He handed the phone back and retreated to his chair without another word. Laura exhaled a low whistle as they walked out. Your father is the Attorney General of the United States? Marcus nodded, his voice low. He was appointed last year. We don't talk about it much. By dawn, news vans swarmed the courthouse steps. Rumors had spread overnight, an unscheduled visit from the Attorney General. Camera crews jostled for position, reporters rehearsed lines, microphones bristling like bayonets. Inside, Judge Whitaker paced his chambers, his phone pressed tight to his ear. Senator, you promised me protection. I've always ruled in your favor. Yes, I understand politics, but this is my career on the line. He slammed the phone down, sweat beating at his temples. His clerk entered, pale. Sir, the FBI is in the lobby. FBI? Whitaker's throat constricted. Taylor's not wasting time. He tugged his robe straight, trying to summon dignity he no longer felt. Meanwhile, Marcus stood with his father at a side entrance. Robert Johnson was tall, broad-shouldered, his calm presence commanding without effort. He rested a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You okay?" Marcus nodded, though his chest was still tight. "Better now. I didn't mean for it to get this big. You stood your ground, respectfully. That's all that matters." They entered a conference room already buzzing with Justice Department officials. Maps of the city covered one wall, red zones glowing like wounds. Laura Chen was there too, standing with a stack of files. "Mr. Attorney General," one aide said, "Ms. Chen has been invaluable. She's compiled evidence linking Judge Whitaker's rulings to environmental violations in specific neighborhoods." Laura gestured to the maps. "The neighborhoods with the worst air quality, the same areas Marcus documented, line up exactly with Whitaker's harshest sentencing patterns, and they overlap with Senator Whitfield's real estate investments." Robert studied the evidence, his jaw set. "So my son's project did more than measure pollution. It exposed a network of corruption." Marcus looked at his cracked project on the table. "I just wanted to help my neighborhood breathe cleaner air." Robert met his eyes. "And you uncovered the truth of why they couldn't?" The door opened. Judge Whitaker entered with his attorney. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "This display is unnecessary," Whitaker snapped. "We're talking about a misunderstanding over a school project." Robert didn't offer his hand. "This meeting isn't about my son's project. That incident simply pulled the first thread. Sit down, a judge." For the next hour, Justice Department lawyers laid out charts, phone records, financial transactions. The evidence was damning. Whitaker's rulings consistently favored developers tied to Senator Whitfield, dismissing environmental cases from minority neighborhoods, handing down sentences 40% longer to defendants from polluted areas. "This is a political witch hunt," Whitaker exploded. "I've served for 20 years. Robert's voice was calm, almost surgical. "And we've reviewed 20 years of rulings. Would you like to explain the statistical disparities? Or perhaps your phone calls with the senator's office before each favorable ruling?" Whitaker's face drained of color. His attorney whispered urgently in his ear. "Finally," Whitaker leaned forward, "I want immunity." The room went silent. Robert slid a document across the table. "You're under formal investigation. You're placed on administrative leave effective immediately. The Ethics Committee meets this afternoon. Cooperate, and your testimony may be considered." Whitaker sagged in his chair, the weight of his career crumbling around him. Marcus sat quietly, watching the judge who had sneered at him the day before, reduced to a husk of fear. That evening, the news spread like wildfire. Anchors reported Whitaker's suspension. Senator Whitfield's name swirled in speculation, and Marcus's project was described, without exaggeration, as the catalyst. At home, Marcus sat on the couch with his parents, the television flickering. "You never wanted this," his mother said softly. "No," Marcus admitted. "But I'm not sorry it happened." Robert loosened his tie, sinking into the armchair. "This is just the beginning. Whitaker has names, dates, amounts. If he talks, the senator will fall, and with him, an entire network." Marcus looked at the cracked device resting on the coffee table. He reached out, running his fingers over the wires. It wasn't just a project anymore. It was evidence. It was proof. It was the start of something far bigger than him. Tomorrow, the nation would learn just how deep the corruption ran, and Marcus Johnson, 17 years old, was at the center of it. The Ethics Committee chamber smelled faintly of wood polish and tension. The long mahogany table gleamed under harsh lights. Stacks of documents spread like ammunition across its surface. Every seat in the gallery was filled. Reporters scribbling, lawyers whispering, cameras forbidden, but stories already alive in their pens. Marcus sat in the second row with his mother. His father, Attorney General Robert Johnson, stood at the head of the room, flanked by Justice Department aides. To one side, Laura Chen sifted through files, her sharp eyes flicking constantly toward the door. That door opened, and a hush fell. Judge William Whitaker walked in, stripped of his robe, his suit hanging loose as if his dignity had been ironed out of it. His attorney shadowed him, whispering furiously. Whitaker's jaw was clenched, but the confidence he had worn like armor just 2 days ago was gone. The committee chair cleared her throat. We convene this emergency session to address allegations of judicial misconduct by Judge William Whitaker. She glanced down at the documents. The charges include discriminatory sentencing patterns, improper dismissal of environmental cases, in conflicts of interest with private development interests. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't a school science fair anymore. This was real power on trial. Robert began methodically, his voice carrying the calm authority of a surgeon making the first incision. For 2 decades, Judge Whitaker presided over this courthouse. Our review of his rulings shows a consistent pattern. Defendants from minority neighborhoods received sentences averaging 40% longer than defendants from affluent areas for the same charges. Simultaneously, environmental protection cases from those same neighborhoods were dismissed at a rate 8 times higher than comparable cases. Murmurs rippled through the room. Whitaker's attorney leapt up. Statistics can be manipulated. Correlation isn't causation. Robert cut him off with a glance. We anticipated that argument. The methodology has been independently verified by 3 universities. The data stands. Laura Chen rose next, sliding a map across the table. Red zones spread across the city like wounds. These are the neighborhoods with the worst air quality, documented by independent studies. Notice how they overlap with Judge Whitaker's harshest sentencing regions. These are also the neighborhoods where Senator Whitfield's companies purchased property at depressed values immediately after environmental violations went unenforced. All eyes swiveled to Whitaker. His face was pale, his attorney scribbling notes furiously. The committee chair leaned forward. Judge Whitaker, do you dispute these findings? He hesitated too long. I acknowledge statistical disparities may exist in my record, but there was never intent to discriminate. Robert's voice sliced the silence. Then how do you explain these phone records? He held up a stack of call logs. Dozens of calls between your chambers and Senator Whitfield's office in the days preceding favorable rulings for his development companies. Whitaker's attorney leapt up again. Irrelevant. Personal friendship. Friendship? Robert's eyebrow lifted. Coincidentally aligned with rulings worth millions of dollars? The tension was suffocating. Marcus's hands clenched in his lap, every muscle taut. Finally, Whitaker leaned forward, his voice low. I want to make a deal. The words detonated in the chamber. Reporters scribbled furiously, committee members exchanging sharp glances. The chair said carefully, a deal. Whitaker's lips twisted, bitter. I can provide complete information about Senator Whitfield's involvement, meetings, payments, instructions, but I want consideration in my case. His attorney pulled at his sleeve, whispering urgently. Whitaker shook him off. Robert folded his hands. This committee isn't in the business of deals, but the Justice Department is interested in the truth. If you cooperate fully, your testimony will be weighed during sentencing. Whitaker sagged in his chair, the fight draining from him. Then I'll talk. During the recess, the air outside the chamber buzzed with chaos. Reporters swarmed the hallway, microphones thrust like weapons, their voices overlapping. Is the senator implicated? Will Whitaker face disbarment? Who is Marcus Johnson, the student whose project exposed all this? Marcus ducked his head as cameras swiveled toward him, his mother shielding him with an arm. He wasn't ready for that spotlight. Not yet. Inside a side room, Whitaker spoke for nearly 2 hours. He named names, dates, dollar amounts. He described private meetings with Senator Whitfield, instructions to dismiss certain environmental cases, assurances that political favors would protect him. By the time he finished, the web was clear. Whitfield's companies bought up land in polluted neighborhoods. Whitaker's rulings ensured violations were ignored, and once the neighborhoods were stripped of value, development flipped them for massive profit. All while children like Marcus's classmates wheezed through inhalers at recess. That evening, the news broke wide open. "Breaking tonight," the anchor intoned. Federal Judge William Whitaker has been suspended pending investigation. Sources confirm he is cooperating with authorities and has implicated Senator Jonathan Whitfield in a scheme involving selective enforcement of environmental regulations. The scandal began after Whitaker confiscated and attempted to destroy a science project created by a 17-year-old student, Marcus Johnson. Marcus's name crawled across the screen. He sank into the couch, stunned. His mother gripped his hand tightly. Robert's phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from Washington, governors, even the White House. He stepped into the kitchen to answer, his voice low, firm, commanding. When he returned, his expression was grim. "The senator's already fighting back. He's calling this investigation a partisan attack." "Is it?" Marcus asked quietly. Robert crouched before him, his eyes steady. "Justice isn't political, son, but corruption always hides behind politics. Don't let them twist what you did. You found the truth." Marcus nodded slowly, though his chest felt heavy. He had wanted to measure air, not topple careers. But maybe the two had been connected all along. The next morning, Marcus stood again before the Environmental Committee, this time with his project fully restored. FBI agents lingered discreetly in the corners, their presence both intimidating and comforting. He set the device on the table, connecting it to a projector. The graphs flickered to life, months of data rendered in red and blue spikes. These readings were taken over 6 months in multiple neighborhoods. Marcus began, his voice steady. "The pattern is undeniable. Environmental laws were enforced selectively. Affluent areas saw swift action, while low-income, minority communities were left exposed." Committee members leaned forward, scribbling notes. Dr. Lawson, the chair, raised his head. "Mr. Johnson, the committee would like to fund an expansion of your monitoring system citywide. Would you accept?" Marcus blinked, stunned. "Yes, absolutely." The room applauded, subdued but genuine. Afterward, Laura caught up to him in the hallway. Whitaker's lawyer called. "He's begging for a deal. The dominoes are falling. Marcus, 3 other judges with similar records have requested leave." Robert joined them, his expression tight. "And Senator Whitfield's company stock dropped 30% overnight. This isn't over, but the cracks are spreading." Marcus looked at the restored project in his hands. A box of wires and sensors, once dismissed as a threat, had opened a door no one could close again. For the first time, he felt the weight of what he had done, not just for himself, but for the city, for every kid who deserved clean air and equal justice. And he knew this was only the beginning. The hearing room was packed wall to wall, the air heavy with expectation. 3 months had passed since Marcus Johnson first carried his air quality monitor through courthouse security. Now, his rebuilt project stood proudly on a display table in front of the Judicial Ethics Committee. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but everyone knew the world was watching. Reporters waited outside, senators whispered in back rooms, and community leaders had traveled from across the country to witness what many were calling the trial that would redefine justice. Judge William Whitaker sat at the defense table, his once imposing presence diminished. Without his robe, without the shield of authority, he looked older, smaller. Beside him, his attorney shuffled papers with nervous precision. Across the aisle, Attorney General Robert Johnson leaned forward, every word of his prepared statement ready to be carved into history. The committee chair opened the session. "We are here to address evidence of judicial misconduct by Judge William Whitaker. This hearing will also examine related allegations against Senator Jonathan Whitfield. Let the record show that Judge Whitaker has agreed to cooperate in exchange for consideration. A low murmur rolled through the gallery. Robert stood, his voice even but charged. This case began with a student project. Marcus Johnson, my son, sought only to measure air quality in his neighborhood. What he discovered led us here today. A system where environmental protections were selectively enforced, where judicial rulings aligned with private profit, where justice bent under political weight. This is not just about one judge. It is about the integrity of our courts and the right of every citizen to equal protection under the law. All eyes shifted to Marcus. He sat stiffly, hands folded, resisting the urge to shrink under the scrutiny. Laura Chen rose next, spreading documents across the committee table. The data is irrefutable. Neighborhoods with the highest minority populations suffered the worst pollution, the least enforcement, and the harshest sentencing. This was not coincidence. It was design. And that design benefited Senator Whitfield's development companies directly. Gasps broke the silence. Some committee members leaned back, stunned, while others scribbled furiously in notes. Finally, Whitaker was called to the stand. He moved slowly, shoulders bowed. When he spoke, his voice cracked with the weight of resignation. I ruled in ways that I believed would support economic growth. But yes, Senator Whitfield influenced me. He called before cases, pressed me to dismiss environmental violations. In return, he promised political backing. I justified it as pragmatic, but in truth, it was corruption, and I allowed it. His confession rippled outward like an earthquake. Reporters rushed out the door to file stories. The committee chair's gavel struck for order. Judge Whitaker, she said coldly, your cooperation is noted, but your career on the bench is over. That night, breaking news filled every channel. Senator Jonathan Whitfield has announced his resignation amid federal investigation. Sources confirm multiple indictments are pending, including charges of corruption, conspiracy, and environmental fraud. On the screen, Marcus watched footage of the senator leaving his office, his once confident smile replaced with a grim scowl. Protesters outside chanted for justice, waving signs about clean air and fair courts. Robert muted the television and turned to his son. This is bigger than either of us imagined, but it started because you refused to stay silent. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I just wanted to finish a science project. His mother smiled softly. And instead you helped start a movement? Weeks later, Marcus stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing the National Conference on Environmental Justice. Behind him, giant screens displayed maps of his city, before and after. Red zones of high pollution had shrunk dramatically since enforcement ramped up. Children in those neighborhoods were already showing fewer asthma emergencies. Environmental justice isn't abstract, Marcus said, his voice firm. It's about who gets to breathe clean air, who plays in safe parks, whose children aren't sacrificed for profit. My project began as a high school assignment, but it revealed that justice, true justice, requires evidence, persistence, and courage to challenge power. The room erupted in applause. Scientists, activists, and policymakers rose to their feet. In the front row, Robert and Laura exchanged a proud glance. After the conference, Marcus and his father walked the National Mall, the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. Do you think it'll last? Marcus asked quietly. Robert clasped his shoulder. That depends on people like you. Systems only change when someone challenges them. What you did was open the crack. Now it's our job to widen it. Marcus nodded, staring at children flying kites on the grass. Clean air, open skies. It didn't feel abstract anymore. A year later, Marcus returned to his old neighborhood. The streets had changed. New trees lined the sidewalks. Air quality monitors, scaled-up versions of his original design, stood at intersections, streaming real-time data to public apps. A park replaced the abandoned lot where kids once played in dust. Inside the courthouse that had started it all, A new plaque hung in the main hall. Environmental Justice Review Board, established in the wake of the Whitaker-Whitfield scandal. School children toured the building, pausing at a display case holding Marcus's original device, restored and preserved. A small sign read, "One student's project helped change a nation." Laura Chen, now head of the Environmental Justice Task Force, greeted him at the exhibit. 47 cities have launched similar monitoring programs. Your story inspired them. And Whitaker? Marcus asked. She smiled wryly. Community service. Ironically, he's working in the neighborhoods he once harmed. They walked into a conference room where Robert waited with community leaders. Maps on the wall showed dramatic improvements in air quality, health outcomes, and environmental compliance across the country. A public health official reported, childhood asthma hospitalizations are down 32% in affected neighborhoods. Respiratory illnesses are declining across the board. Marcus sat quietly, absorbing it all. What began as wires and sensors had become national policy. Later that evening, Marcus visited his old high school. A banner stretched across the front. Johnson Environmental Science Academy, opening fall term. Inside, students huddled around new monitoring stations, analyzing data, preparing reports, learning to ask the same questions Marcus had asked. Robert joined him at the doorway. You know what Whitaker told me during his community service? He said he never thought one person could change a system, especially not someone young. Marcus looked at the students. It wasn't just me. It was everyone who refused to look away once the truth came out. They stepped outside as the sun set, painting the sky gold. Marcus breathed deeply, the air clean, sharp, alive. He remembered Whitaker's words that first day. You need to learn your place. Now he knew the truth. Your place is wherever you choose to make a stand. If you found strength in Marcus's story, hit that like button so others can discover it too. Stories like this matter. Stories where one voice uncovers injustice and sparks real change. Subscribe to for more powerful narratives of everyday people standing up to corruption, discrimination, and abuse of power. And share this video with someone who needs a reminder. One person really can make a difference.